Welcome to the show. Today, we're diving into a powerful and incredibly important conversation about human trafficking, a topic that often feels distant, but is happening right in our own community. We'll explore the heartbreaking realities and complexities of this issue through the eyes of someone who has not only survived it, but is now a beacon of hope and change. My guest, Kachia Phillips, shares her candid and deeply personal journey, revealing how she navigated a childhood marked by vulnerability, the devastating impact of exploitation, and her remarkable path to recovery and advocacy. Her story highlights the critical need for awareness, education, and community involvement to protect those most at risk. Get ready for an unvarnished look at a challenging subject filled with lessons on resilience, redemption, and the true meaning of empowerment. So to begin, Kachia, could you tell us a little bit about your journey before you became involved with human trafficking?
Sure. I came from a divorced family, and I really grew up in a rural area up at Goshen, Arkansas. But once my parents split, I ended up in a single parent home. So that kind of geared me towards gravitating kids in the similar situations that I was in.
How would you explain or describe your childhood, generally speaking?
Generally speaking, I had a pretty good childhood. I grew up in a Christian home. We were all very close. My great grandmother was kind of the backbone of our family. Kind of held us together until she passed. And generally, I mean, I had a good life. I had great parents, and they both loved. They both loved all of us kids very much. I had an older brother and two younger sisters.
Okay, so it was a positive childhood.
Absolutely. I mean, it was up until the point I did end up being molested by a family friend's child from when I was 5 till I was 9 years old. So that was kind of the beginning of the overwhelming shame that I had as a young child that I carried.
I'm going to get deep into your story because I've heard bits of it and it's amazing story. But I think it's really important for us to define human trafficking, what that is. My understanding is there's kind of two components. There's a labor trafficking and there's a sex trafficking.
Yes.
Are those the two main components?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so what can you tell me about those two components of human trafficking, and what is the common thread between those?
Well, labor trafficking actually is more prevalent than sex trafficking due to the agriculture, factories, housekeeping, things like that. We have actually worked with a client before that had been involved in some labor trafficking and brought over from another country. So those kinds of things do happen. For me, in my lived experience, I experienced both labor and sex trafficking. The labor trafficking, though, that I did was doing illegal activities for the person that I was working for and with identity theft, but I was forced to do it.
How
Otherwise,
old were you?
oh, I was probably 22 when that happened. Now, the first time I was ever sex trafficked, I was 17. I was with a friend who was quite a bit older than me, and we were hanging out up at the fraternities at the University of Arkansas.
Mhm.
And I was 16, 17 years old when we started hanging out there with some people. And one night, my friend said, "Hey, we need some money to, go to this frat party tonight." I said, "Well, I don't have any money." And she was like, "Well, I know this man, and all you have to do is go over here and see him and do what he asks you to do, and he'll give you a lot of money." And at that point, I was still in that era of, I wanted to be accepted. I wanted people to be my friend. And of course, it didn't feel right. And of course, I was scared. But at the same time, I didn't want to disappoint my friend. And I felt pressured quite a bit. So we did. She took me over there. I went to see this man and did what he asked me to do and walked out with some money. And that was And there again come that shame, overwhelming shame over me again. That was the beginning of my part in the human trafficking.
It's amazing to me the conflict that everybody faces to some degree inside their soul, where you've got, on one hand, something gripping you to do something wrong. And on the other hand, you're holding on to dear life for what you know to be true.
Mm,
And those things come into conflict. And everybody has that fight at some point in their life. It doesn't matter who you are. That's part of the human experience
yeah.
is being faced with adversity, being faced with a choice that you may or may not have and what you know to be true. So as you were faced with that first initial meeting, tell me more about that conflict going on inside of you.
Well, I don't think it was just a conflict. I think it was, what is that person going to think of me if I don't do what they asked me to do? Am I going to lose my friend? Am I going to lose the community that I was in? Were people going to look at me as less than because I didn't follow through with what somebody asked me to do? There was just all kinds of thoughts going through my head as a kid. I didn't want to be not accepted. I didn't want to be alone. I mean, I just wanted to I was huge at people pleasing even as a child, and I thought I was doing it to keep my friends. I don't know what really went through my head, but I was just like, "Well, if I don't do this, am I not gonna get to do these other things?" And then the lie of this is empowering and you're making money. I think a lot of my down the road ended up being like, you watch movies like Pretty Woman as a kid and you think, "Man, I want that," but and they show you all the glamorous, they show you the money, they show you the material things, but they don't show you or they don't talk to you about the dark side of it. They don't talk to you about the abuse and the physical, sexual abuse, the domestic violence part. They don't talk to you, that's not how they recruit you. They want to show you all the nice things. They want to buy you these things. They want to, and then eventually isolate you and to convince you that they're the only ones that care about you. And then eventually it's, well, I did all this for you. I got all these things for you. Took care of you. I got you I introduced you to drugs. I've been supplying your drugs for you. Now you owe me.
It sounds to me when we're talking about human trafficking, we have labor trafficking and sex trafficking. The common thread in that is you have a victim that's vulnerable,
Mhm.
and then you have a trafficker that is exploiting, right?
Absolutely.
Is that the common
That
thread?
is the common thread. Our definition that we use for human trafficking is literally it is people selling people. It doesn't necessarily mean it's for money. It doesn't necessarily mean it's for drugs. It could be anything. You're trading a person for something of substance. Like it can be a place to live, a meal. And that's why our homeless population and the reason why we go into rehabs and sober livings and homeless places, centers is because those are the vulnerable. So wherever you see vulnerability, that's where you're going to see, that's where they're going to target. Those are the traffickers are going to target, or even vulnerable young women who are online as social media saying, "Oh, I just broke up with my boyfriend. I don't know what to do. He left me." And what does that do for a trafficker? I'm going to come in and rescue you. I give you a place to stay, all those different things. And my sister had met a man when she was 16. She met a man that's 20 years older than her. This is her. I mean, we did all this together, but her first experience was not my first experience. There were two different settings, two different groups, but, he groomed her for 2 years before he married her. And then, when it was time to get married, and he had done all these things, taking her on trips and buying her things, and introducing her to drugs and things like that, and then, when they got married, it's like, "No, now you owe me."
So your sister was vulnerable,
Absolutely.
and this gentleman exploited that vulnerability. You mentioned your vulnerability, wanting to fit in. What was your sister's vulnerability? And then kind of broader, what's in our area of Northwest Arkansas, what is a common, if there's such a thing, what is a common vulnerability amongst maybe our youth and young adults?
Low self-esteem, wanting to belong, coming from single-parent homes. For my sister and I, my mother at this time, my mother and father had divorced. My mom was working 2 full-time jobs to support us. So, we had a lot of time on our hands at home by ourselves. So, that was a big deal too. I mean, not having both parents in the home can really, and then, the divorce, all these different things that I carried that I thought was my fault had a lot to do with it. Single parent homes are really, those kids are very vulnerable. Kids that are being bullied at school, they're vulnerable. Kids in general are vulnerable. And the way traffickers target is, I mean, even in our schools, they're trafficking going on in our schools all the time.
And what does that look like? Who are
Um,
the traffickers?
so a lot of traffickers will recruit younger kids.
Are these are adults that are, or is it other
It doesn't
kids?
have to be. It could be other kids. It happens all the time, but there means okay. There we call this the AMP model, and that's the action means and purpose. So the action would be like recruitment, right? Transportation, harboring, receipt of persons, and then we have means would be force, fraud, and or coercion. So force would be somebody in authority over somebody, right? And there's a lot of different ways that could happen. It's not force doesn't have to be like a physical force. It could be somebody that has authority over you, right? Like
A boss, a
a boss,
coach,
a
a
teacher, a coach, a pastor,
church
a
leader, yeah,
police officer. It could be anybody
yeah.
that has that authority over you. And then fraud would be a lie. My sister and I both we were lied to. Like, you can have all this. We're going to have all this. We're going to build this, we're going to build this business and we're going to have all these things. And yeah, when I went to visit my sister for the first time after she got married to him and they were in Minneapolis and I went up there and saw all the things they had, I was like, wow, I want that. Condo on the lake and driving a nice car and they're, shopping every day and doing all these things. I mean, it looked really good.
Yeah,
But then again, I didn't know what that was gonna cost me.
right. We were talking about the vulnerability of our youth, and maybe I'm especially interested because I have teenage girls, that are in high school, and I want not only myself to understand, but the general audience and the area, Northwest Arkansas, to understand that we need to protect our youth, and they are vulnerable. You mentioned kids that are bullied, single parent homes where mom and dad aren't around a lot,
Yeah.
kids that are trying to fit in, and then people in authority, teachers and coaches or whatnot, somebody that has authority over these people. How does it get from just regular interactions to exploitation? I'd imagine some of these traffickers don't start out as traffickers and don't consider themselves traffickers.
No, and actually, most traffickers know their victims.
Most traffickers
Know their
know their
victims.
victims.
Yeah. So, for my sister, they became friends first, right? They became friends. They started, using together.
And it was a genuine
It
friendship,
was a
right?
genuine friendship.
Okay.
Most of them start like that, and even within the schools, like, you got a guy and you got a girl who is just, this guy's paying attention to her and, then asked her to send pictures of herself and this those kind of things, and then she's building this trust and relationship with this person and thinks that this guy really loves her, and then all of a sudden it's maybe later on he's asking her to, "Well, if you really love me, you'll do this." even it to the point where she maybe said, "No, she doesn't feel comfortable doing this." Well, then, I got these pictures of you.
Wow.
Mm, I got these pictures you sent me, and if you don't do what I say, then I'm gonna send them out to your parents, to your school.
And this is not like a crazy scenario, right?
No,
Like
absolutely
this
not. It's
happens
common.
in
It's
our
very common.
schools.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's just really what's important is us to be able to educate our community, educate our parents, educate the schools, educate the children in the schools. Awareness and education is key. If you don't know, you don't know. If you don't know what you're looking for, and I remember my mom saying after the first awareness training that I spoke at with Hub of Hope here in Rogers, um, I got up and told my story, and my mom was there at this training. And I remember after I was done, my mom stood up and she said, "I'm Keisha's mom." And she said, "I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help my daughters." She said, "All I knew how to do was pray." And that really just gave my mom and I a moment of healing between each other because my mom raised my kids. And I handed them over to her when they were very young. And in my eyes, I was giving her my kids because I didn't love myself enough to love my children. I had no love to give them, and I could not take care of them, but I wasn't ready to leave that life. But in my mother's eyes, as her being somebody who was put in a foster home at a young age, and her mom leaving her dad with all the kids to take care of while he was in the army, and she went to Cooks and Hills when she was 15. So in her eyes, it was like, "How dare you abandon your kids?" But in my perspective, it was like, I can't I can't love them like you can love them. I can't take care of them like you can take care of them. And so after this whole training and everything, there's a lot of healing between my mom and I. Now she understands. Like, no, it's not your fault and you didn't know what to do, but I'm still glad that I went through everything I went through because if I didn't go through it, how am I going to help the next person get through it? And it's just so important that the parents know that you have to be present. You have to be present in your kid's life. You have to pay attention to the things that are going on in their lives, even within school and out of school. I have 5 granddaughters now. 5. Yeah. So with my job too, I am constantly on alert. What my son may think is okay, or my daughter-in-law may think it's okay to let the kids do certain things. I'm like,
You've got a totally different
"No,
perspective. Well,
absolutely not."
and that's why I think what you're doing is so incredibly important. And it is that education piece because nobody can educate about this like someone
Mm,
like you that's lived it
yeah,
and that's been in it. And the value that that brings to a society for people to say, "Hey, this is the craziness that I lived," and to expose it for what it is, we have to have more of that,
yeah,
and I really think that's one of the messages of this podcast. It's we've got to be open. We have to be vulnerable in a way that is empowering, not vulnerable in a way that gets us exploited,
yeah,
but vulnerable in a way that empowers us, and to be open with these stories. I remember years ago, I'm very involved with my church, and one of my assignments was to attend an addiction recovery class, not as an addict, but just as a observer. And that was one of the most impactful church meetings that I'd ever been to. I've been to thousands of them,
mm,
but it was impactful because the people that were there was no pretense. They weren't hiding anything. It was this is who I am. This is what I'm going through. And that idea of being open with each other to me was very powerful.
absolutely.
And so I do. I love the fact that you're open. And I guess, is it harder for you now to be this
No,
open?
no, not at all. What I remember as the first time I met the director at Hub of Hope, I was at a reentry coalition meeting at the Returning Home Center in Springdale before they had opened. And, she was doing a awareness training there. At the end of the training, she, gave a Q&A, and, this man had raised his hand. He said, if I go home today or I go to lunch with a friend today, and they ask me, how do I know that human trafficking is going on in my backyard?
Mm.
And what do I tell them? And so Jenny proceeded to say, give the statistics that they've worked with over 200 survivors and within 5 county radius and Northwest Arkansas and this and that. And I was sitting there and I was like, I gotta say something, I gotta validate this. I gotta solidify this. I was like, oh, but I'm scared, I don't want to get up and say anything. And I just felt Holy Spirit just like, "You've got to get up and say something." I raised my hand, and she looked at me. I'd never met her before in my life, and she looked at me, and she was, like, looking at me like, "What is this? What's about to happen? What is this girl?" And she was like, "Yeah, but do you have anything to add to that?" And I stood up and turned around, and I looked at the man, and I said, "You can go back today and tell your friends that you met someone who's been bought and sold in your backyard for the last 22 years." And the room just fell silent. And she just looked at me and she's like, "Oh, yeah, me and you gotta talk after
So
this."
was that a pivotal point in your life?
For me, that was, "This is what I'm supposed to do.
At
This
that
is my
very point,
purpose."
it was
At that
like,
very point, I mean, like, God had done such a work in me, and I had gone to prison, I had done drug court, and I had he delivered me from everything all at once. It was wild at a deliverance retreat in an all Hispanic Pentecostal church. So, God's got a sense of humor too.
yeah.
But he took all those desires from me all at once. And so this was my part. I had just stepped out of prison when this happened and started getting involved with my community and just started pulling from my community. Everything that I could get, everything that I needed, I wanted to learn about, I was going to be there. I was going to figure out and just go to these places and connect with these people and try to figure out, God, what do you want me to do? Like, what am I supposed to do? And never in a million years did I think it was going to be just directed towards human trafficking. I thought, reentry, recovery. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I worked at several different rehabs. I worked at Decision Point as a detox specialist before until the day they closed. Then I went to True Self Recovery. That's where I met Tommy. And then after that, I went to Eagle Crest Recovery and worked there for a while. And I was like, wow, I could just keep moving to these different places, getting all this different training. I thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to be in recovery. And I'm learning all these things. I just wanted to learn about recovery and what it meant and how to keep it. And I started out in Celebrate Recovery in Fayetteville at Christian Life Cathedral. That was my first recovery group. And then, that pivoting moment at that day at that training was like, I was just really vulnerable and transparent. Like I just told this whole room of people that I had been trafficked and that I would, I did these things. And so it was like almost an empowering moment. Like, I don't have to be ashamed of this anymore.
I want to compare that feeling to back when you were 17 years old and you were empowered by, going out and making money. Compare that to 22 years later when you felt empowered. Explain to me
Well, before
because we
it was
use the
like,
same word, but it's a
yeah,
very
it
different
is. It
experience.
is very different. I mean, it's night and day. This was the empowering. Now, this was the empowerment I was looking for, that I was so wanting and longing for. Your mind plays trick. I mean, people are telling you one thing. People are lying to you, telling you that this is how you get it. As a child, the world is going to teach you that your value lies in the money you make, the material things you have. So that was the lie I bought back then. And does it fulfill you? Not a bit. You're going to keep chasing it, keep chasing it, and keep chasing it. You're never going to be filled. I had to learn after getting sober and dealing with my demons and walking through healing that my value has never lied in the material things I had and the money I made. My value lies in who I am and whose I am. That's where my value lied. And people can have their opinions and they can, either love you or hate you, but the bottom line is that I know who I am and whose I am. And I know who loves me. And I know who's going to continue to love me no matter if I go the wrong direction again, or no matter if I fall, or if I make a mistake. I know that love is not going to be taken from me. As a child, I was always in fear of, if I don't do this, this person's not going to love me. This person's going to hate me if I don't do this for them. And that was always my fear as a child. So to have that empowerment and stand up in front of people and say, yep, I did this, but I did this, but now I get to use this to help the next one and the next one and the next one. I mean, that's the real empowerment.
What's so interesting to me is, back when you're 17 years old, these lies that you're being told are wrapped up in something, in a truth.
Absolutely.
Empowerment is a wonderful thing.
Mhm.
It's a wonderful, it empowered people to accomplish things and to do things. But if that is wrapped up in the wrong thing, that empowerment, then it's a dead end.
Yes.
And that sense of empowerment that you were feeling, it wasn't empowered to help other people at that point. You were empowering yourself to help yourself
Yeah, absolutely.
versus 22 years later, you're empowered not to help yourself. You're empowered to help somebody else.
Because I quickly learned after I got sober that my life was never about me. My life was never about me. It was not about me. In my addiction, everything was about me. It was about me and what I could get from others. And it
So
was just a totally twisted, it was twisted. It's supposed to be about others and what I can do for others, not about what I can get from them.
welcome to the Good Influencers. I'm your host, Ty Manning. At my business, Restoration One of Northwest Arkansas, we restore properties damaged by water, fire, and mold. Our unique difference, though, and the inspiration for this podcast, lies with our incredible team. Most of our dedicated professionals are on paths of recovery, living out the good influence we highlight here. They bring a culture of trust and resilience to every project, ensuring that your home or business isn't just repaired, but thoughtfully restored. Choosing Restoration One means you're getting expert service from a team driven by purpose and a desire to have a positive influence. If you need compassionate restoration services, find us online at restoration1ofnwa.com or call us 24/7 at 479-866-4257. We're here to restore your property and your peace of mind. So during that 22-year span, how you got to a point where something happened
Mhm.
before you got that meeting and you stood up and you turned around and you felt this empowered moment. Something happened to you to lead you to that point.
January 23rd, 2015.
Okay, it's got a date. That's
It's a
good.
date. And that was the day that I woke up at my brother-in-law's that morning, and I felt something inside me saying, "Today, something is about to happen." And, I went with a friend down to the store, that morning, and I had 2 warrants out for my arrest, or I warrant out for my arrest for 2, delivery charges because, within all that trafficking, still gotta supply my drug habit, right? So I was selling drugs and doing them while I was doing all this. And I was at the store and I went in there, got what I was gonna get, and then I guess not I guess, 2 detectives were sitting in the restaurant at Rick's Iron Skillet in Fayetteville, and they saw me walk out of the store. They had been looking for me for a year.
So they knew who you were.
They knew exactly who I
Yeah.
was. And I guess that's why, they don't really have to do a whole lot of work because, you'll end up popping up somewhere and, so they're not gonna try real hard, but they saw me walk out, and I got in my friend's car, and we got around the corner, and a patrol car pulled us over. They had called patrol car and had them pull us over. And, as I was sitting there, they asked me who I was. They ran my ID, and they said, "Well, you got a warrant out for your arrest." I said, "Okay." And my friend's crying, and she's like, "What do I do?" And I said, "Nothing. I'm tired." And the detectives pulled up, and they said, "Well, Acacia, we can, make this all go away if you do a few things for us." I said, "No, I'm tired."
What did they mean by that?
Well, sometimes, they'll try to get you to wear wires on other people, to drop your charges. At that point, I was just tired. It's like, I'm not doing that. I said, "Go on, take me to jail." So they took me to Washington County Jail, and I slept for a couple of days. And the chaplain came in there a few days later and was handing out free Bibles. And she gave me a Bible, and she said, "I really encourage you to read the red letters in that Bible because they're for you." And I grew up in a Christian home. I knew who God was and went to church and things like that, but I had never had an encounter. And so I opened the Bible to John 8. And as I was reading John 8:32 and 8:36, it said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And 36 said, "He who the Son sets free is free indeed." And those verses just jumped out at me. I mean, that like I just pondered and pondered and pondered on this. So that night after the lights went out, I was on that top bunk and I just raised my arms and I said, "Dad, I need you to clean up my mess. And I said, if you're the God who you say you are, I'm going to sit here till you come get me." And I just cried. I just wept and silently. That next day, my friend Mary, who had been trying to get me to go to church with her, she would come by my brother-in-law's house and I'd hide, duck in the, house because I thought, she was looking through my windows, but she probably wasn't. But she came to see me. She found out I was in jail and she came to see me. And she said, "God sent me to come get you." I said, "Oh, yeah, right." She said, "No, God sent me to come get you. How do I get you out of here?" So I gave her a random number of a bondsman off the wall. 20 minutes later, no paperwork, no money, nothing. He calls up to the jail and tells him to let me out. And so as I'm getting my stuff together and I'm getting booked out, the jailer looked at me, he said, "Well, that man must really trust you." I said, "I don't even know that man." And so at that moment, I knew that, okay, God is answering my prayer. He's answering my prayer. And I said, I told the guys, I kind of bargained with them. I know I'm not supposed to bargain, but I just told him, I said, "You do this for me." I said, "I'm going to serve the rest of my life serving you." And that week, and she came and got me. We went to the bondsman, after I got out and we went and talked to him and did all the paperwork. And she's like, "Well, we have a women's deliverance retreat going on this weekend and it starts tonight. We want to pay for you to go. Do you want to go?" And she went to an all Hispanic Pentecostal church. And I did not know Spanish. But I said yes anyway. And she was a great translator. And I went, and the pastor and his wife and all of these women laid hands on me, prayed on me. I was on the floor, coughing up stuff. Stuff was coming out of me. I was calling them out, calling out the demons that had attached themselves to me for so long. After I was done, I stood up and I lost my voice. But I turned around. We were at Skyview Cabins in Winslow. But I looked up and I looked out the bay window and I saw this bald eagle just fly across the window. And immediately I heard the Lord say, "It's finished. It's finished." And that was January 23rd, 2015. And I have not had a hiccup, not a desire, nothing. Not for a drug, a drink, a cigarette. That thing had just all went away at once. And I've been serving him since. Just letting him, allowing him to order my steps and taking it one day at a time.
It sounds like your heart was ready to
It
change.
was.
Had you made attempts in those 22 years to make changes? Because I've speak to people that are addicted to drugs a lot, and there's lots of relapses, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it this time," but they don't do it.
There was a couple of times, like I had, been to prison 3 different times. And the first 2 times just didn't stick. My intentions were to get out and not do it anymore. But those same people that I had got in trouble with were right there at my doorstep when I got out, the day I got out. My traffickers, right? They were right there. "Hey, here you go. Here's some drugs. Come on back. You're a felon now. You're not gonna get a good job. You're not gonna make money like this out there. You might as well come on back. Yeah, welcome back, here you go." And, it was like that. But this last time was different because I had gone to that deliverance retreat and then gone to prison. So, after I got delivered and while I was waiting on my bed, I just sat at my mom's, until my bed came open. And then when I went to prison, I remember hearing God saying, like, "You're good, this is your not," because I was supposed to do a whole year, but then I was eligible for early release. And, God just told me, He was like, "You're gonna do 9 months in here." And what's the equivalent of my 9 months? I mean, what is it's like a birthing, right? So it was my time. I spent every evening at a Bible study every night, 7 days a week in prison. I got my serve safe. I got my culinary arts while I was in there. I just took everything in that I could while I was there. And wouldn't you know it, it was 9 months to the very day that I got out. I mean, to the very day.
It was your rebirth.
It was my rebirth. It was my time with him to download in me what I needed to come out here and do what he needed me to do, and with no distractions. And that time in prison this last time was so precious to me. I know a lot of them say, "Oh, I never wanna go back there, and it was horrible, and this and that," but that time was precious to me. That was my time of healing and learning how much he did love me and that he was gonna be faithful. I never had anybody in my life that was faithful. It had to teach me what a provider looks like, what a faithful person looks like, what a father looks like. I had a great dad, but he failed me in so many ways. But I finally had one who was perfect, that wasn't gonna fail me. And so I had to learn all those things while I was in there to come out and do what I did. So by the time I got out of prison, when I stepped into drug court, it was nothing. It was such a breeze. There was no messing up, and it just gave me a full-time job as a dietary manager as soon as I got out with those skills that I learned in there. I did not have any cooking skills before I went in there. I was not a cook. And now I'm a complete foodie, chef, I've done it all. It wasn't even a desire I ever had, but he gave me that, and I mean, it was a gift. It helped me in so many ways, but he just gave me so much while I was in there, and so once I got out of drug court, I had the same ministry team come back, prison ministry team that was going in the women's prison to see me. After I got out, they asked me to go back in with them a year later, and I did it
What did
for
that
5
feel like?
years. Oh, it's amazing. Like, knowing that those doors, when they close, I'm gonna come out on the other side, that was great. It was amazing. Um, and I loved being there with those ladies
You
because
could relate to them.
I
You were
saw
just
myself.
there. You
Yeah, I saw myself in every one of those seats.
So you born and raised in Northwest Arkansas, you were human trafficked all over Northwest Arkansas. You were, basically born again, given this new chance. Why did you decide to stay in Northwest Arkansas?
Because my community needed me, and I knew that. It's easier to convince a community that it is going on when it was your community. Although it took a long while for people to see me that knew me, like, is she really changed? Is she really a different person? Because I know it, I mean, but it took years
Well, I mean,
of consistency.
I'd imagine you probably run into maybe your traffickers, maybe police or jailers that have arrested you, maybe old clients. Like, that's got to be.
I don't know. It's just, the one police officer, that used to be at Fayetteville. He was that one officer that never treated me like I was a criminal. I mean, every time we had run-ins, he was just kind to me. And he actually lives one street over from my mom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's so
Do
cool.
you know him now?
Yeah, we
You
do.
do?
Yeah, and he's just, lets me know that he's real proud of me. Some of the judges, they're just real proud of me, and I'm just building that community, and and I just wanted my hand in everything. I just wanted my hand in everything because I was gonna prove to myself that I could do this, and I wanted to prove to these people that people can change. I needed them to see that, and I think it is huge for the community to know that people change because there's just not a whole lot of second chances out here for people with employment, housing, all these different things. I just want to change the minds or the thoughts of people of what they think they know or who they think they know. People who make bad choices doesn't determine who they are. They're just bad choices. And I think when people like me just decide, we don't want to be this way anymore and we want a lot, we want to live the right way. I think the community needs to be a part of that and helping that make that happen.
So tell me about Hub a Hope because that's what you do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I'm the program coach and survivor leader for Hub of Hope, and I work directly with our victims of human trafficking, journeying with them in their healing process, finding resources for them. We also have a harbor where we do art therapy, survivor support groups. I'm really just there for along the ride with them and try to help empower them and encourage them to build sustainable lives for themselves. We have a great team, but we have a small but mighty team. There's only three of us that are four of us on staff. It is very rewarding, but at the same time, you try not to take on their trauma and try to have healthy boundaries. And it's a hard job, but it is an amazing, amazing job. But I really love, love, love doing awareness trainings is probably my favorite part besides helping the
What does
survivors.
that consist of?
Well, we offer free trainings to anyone in the community. I think in a couple of weeks, I'm headed to Arkansas Children's Hospital in Little Rock to do trainings for the teams down there. We've done them for the fire department here in Rogers.
And these trainings, are they, what to look for
Yes,
or
absolutely.
how to handle, like
Yeah.
what?
What are well, we do a lot of, and we go into the rehabs too in the schools, and what to look for. What are the signs, identifiers, and markers? What are the vulnerable populations? Just different signs of maybe abuse, branding, no eye contact. I mean, probably if it's just one thing, it might not be, but if you combine a lot of those different things like the downcast and the bruising and the maybe a barcode tattooed on the back of their neck or anything like that, we go over all of those and we also, do it for the nurses, the healthcare system, because, sometimes end up in the hospital, whether it be a broken bones or STD or whatever, they would just want to be able to educate the community, our churches, and educate parents so they know what to look for. We also have another training called Parents Against Child Trafficking about, internet safety, those kind of things. So we do a lot and it's all free. We do it for anybody who asks. And then we do a big training twice a year. It's an all day training.
And you have people come to you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a monumental task.
Yeah.
You have three of you, and you have this area of, I don't know, 600,000 people. And do you feel, do you feel you're making an impact? Do you?
Absolutely.
eh,
And we do have volunteers and we always have opportunities for volunteering too, for board members, sponsorships, for our fundraisers every year. There's plenty of opportunities for people to lean in. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll post some of those opportunities maybe in our show notes and give, just another way for people to find you guys and to reach out and help. Is there anything in your story that you feel is really important that we haven't touched on?
I just want everybody out there to know that if they're in recovery or if they're coming out of something horrible, that there's hope and that there are others out here that have been through what you've been through. Never be afraid to ask for help. I think somebody said today, help is asking for help is a complete prayer. I think we've gotten to a world where we feel like sometimes we feel like we can't reach out for help. Maybe it's a pride issue or whatever it is, but the real strength is asking for help. So,
So you've come a long way in 10 years. What's the next 10 years look like for you?
oh, I have no idea. I'm just taking it one day at a time.
Yeah.
I'm just allowing God to order my steps and do whatever He asks me to do. There are a few visions. I just opened an LLC called Unashamed Beauty, which will really kind of direct me into just the public speaking area and some podcasting too, eventually. We had a lot of survivors that are ready to, maybe not be seen, but be heard.
So you want to be able to tell people stories,
I
bring more
wanna
awareness.
Yeah, I wanna be able to do podcasts with them, maybe not on video, but,
Yeah.
I may not wanna do that, but, just a lot of good God stories, that are out here and that, I really wanna help them. I guess my goal is, it's great to be an advocate for others and to be a voice for others, but my purpose and passion is to help them gain the courage and strength to be a voice for themselves and the next person.
Because that's what changed you.
That's what changed me.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts. It didn't disappoint. Um, it's conversations like these that, make me reflect on, the efforts that I'm making and, what I can do to, do better. And, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to promote people like yourself that are doing critically important things in our community. And thank you for your vulnerability and your kind words. And we'll post ways for people to get a hold of you. And I want to see your organization and your influence grow. I think you've really got a good message.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We hope you were inspired by the story of today's good influencer. If so, please consider sharing it. Also, if you know someone doing good in our community whose story needs to be heard, send them my way. You can email me at thegoodinfluencerspodcast@gmail.com.